what's causing it. If you look at the Mediterranean, Australia, any place like that, everybody's seeing an increase in fire incidents. So we're in a Mediterranean climate, we need to pay attention here. Slide, please. Here's what the researchers tell us. And after these firestorms and many others, they look at and say, there are some things you can do to protect your home. We've all heard of 100 foot of defensible space. The first 35 feet of your home, irrigated landscaped area. The next 65 feet, natural vegetation. What we want you to do is reduce that, thin it down to roughly 50% of the mass that is there. We'll show some photos here in a moment. The big problem isn't direct flame, it isn't convective heat, radiated heat, it's embers, which can fly over a mile. And we had a tremendous experience with that here in Rancho Bernardo. And we as a department, I was the city's incident commander in 2007, we made some mistakes. There's some things we should have done better. In 2007, I'll talk a bit more about that. House-to-house ignition, I was having a conversation just before the meeting started with a gentleman who was concerned about ornamental landscaping between his home. It's on his neighbor's property right next to his home. So you're talking about cypress and junipers and palm trees and things like that. Once something like that gets going, it exposes houses on both sides. So you could do the best job in the world with your property. If your neighbor isn't of a like mind, their unwillingness to do those things can jeopardize your property as well. That's kind of a challenge for us. The way your house is built, some of the features built into it determine to a large degree how ignitable it is. Slide, please. These are the winds we're looking at. If you look at the bottom photograph here, these are hurricane-force winds that occur during a Santa Ana. That's what we have problems with. We're very well suited to handling day-to-day fire problems and the kinds of emergencies communities face. We're a very good fire department. There isn't a fire department in the world that can stop a natural disaster like this. It's like asking us to stand in front of a hurricane. Winds blow like this, they start to blow embers like that, up to a mile away. And just millions and millions and millions of these, and it only takes one to take your home to the ground. And that's the challenge that we face. So what do? Well, we have to have citizens really help us harden their homes. And the government's not done a good job of incentivizing that, so we need to identify that. We need to be honest about what we as firefighters can do, and I'll tell you now, day to day, we do a wonderful job. Firestorm like that, those fires go out when the wind stops blowing. We do a fairly decent job of guiding around homes and protecting homes and doing things. But we lost 360 homes in 2003, another 360 in 2007. These are natural disasters and we can't be everywhere at one time. We need to do a better job. I told you we made a mistake. We lost a lot of homes that were very far away from the canyon rims. The embers got homes in the middle of neighborhoods that had we been more on the ball, we would have been patrolling those neighborhoods to identify that a small fire was starting and hopefully extinguish that. So in a moment I'll talk about some things that we've done as a result of learning that difficult lesson that some people in your community unfortunately suffered a high price. We'll talk a little bit later at the end, that's the very last slide I believe, talks about what you should do when a fire is coming. We want you to prepare, do everything you can, but then we want you to be somewhat safe when we're dealing with these fires. Slide please. So we talk about defensible space. These are all the codes that were kind of passed to make things better after the 2003 fire. So these are all great. They do a good job, but they don't necessarily protect your home from embers 100%. There are things that you need to do beyond that. And I said, I don't want to spend a ton of time doing this. There's a tremendous amount of literature, including DVDs with all kinds of guidelines that will cover that for you. If you have an interest, I would please ask that you take those with you. Slide, please. Here's what we're after with regard to that 100 feet of defensible space. And that 65 feet that extends beyond your irrigated space, we really want you to thin the fuel mass down. So when the fire comes roaring up the hill, it doesn't have the intensity or the fuel load to drive it all the way into your home. It's still going to throw embers, it's still going to do a lot of things, but firefighters can safely operate in the area up here. They can knock the fire down, they can keep it from getting to your home. If there's really densely vegetated areas, the flame lengths are so long that they literally have to hide behind your home. Once the fire front passes, they can then come back around and try to do some extinguishment. They can't get between that and your home to kill. Next, please. In the aftermath of each fire, the fire services, public safety as a whole really is pretty tough on itself. It does after-action reviews. We're very critical of what we've done. We don't focus on the fact that we may have saved thousands of homes. We focus on the fact that we lost 360, or that we allowed someone to die in the fire. So we have after-action reports from both of those. NIST came in, National Institute of Standards and Technology came in, did a lot of empirical studies, did a lot of work in the trails to find out exactly how each home ignited. And from that came a lot of ideas and a lot of blueprints for improvement. So I'd like to move on to some of the lessons that were learned and what we in the fire service have done to put some action behind those lessons. Slide, please. One of the hardest lessons we learned in 03, we were disappointed to see it happen in 07 again, is that mutual aid may not be there when we need it to be. California has the most sophisticated mutual aid, one agency helping another, to be found anywhere in the world. It's the model for many other programs. It was born in 1970 as a result of the Lagoon Fire. But what typically happens with weather patterns is the Santa Ana winds begin to blow north of us. Fires begin north of us, it starts to commit a lot of resources to the north of us, and then 2 or 3 days later, when we finally experience those severe winds, we ask for help. I asked for 20 strike teams. That's 100 fire engines. I didn't get any during the first 2 or 3 days of that fire. For the first 2 days, I didn't get any engines at all, except for one strike team that we stole that was passing through our area. We basically hijacked it. We said, "You're not going anywhere. You're going to help us here." They're going to Cal Fire up in Ramon. So this is a challenge for us. It's going to remain a challenge. As I recall from looking at another slide that depicts this, there were something like 21 fires in 2007 burning in the state when the when the Witch Creek Fire was ignited. So a lot of resources were already being consumed. So what do we do about that? Next slide, please. Got to have strong regional coordination between the agencies that are already here in our little cul-de-sac of California. So everybody benefits from that budgetarily. We've done a lot of different things to make that happen. You may have heard some call it some consolidations. La Mesa, El Cajon, Lemon Grove consolidated. Solana Beach, Rancho Bernardo, there's one other, I think Del Mar consolidated. So that's kind of happening. There's no reason to have 55 autonomous fire agencies working independent of one another. You're also seeing standardized policies between everybody. We used to have 8 zones within the county for mutual aid, and all the departments were kind of sorted into those 8 zones. We're now down to 4. There's a working through consolidating the policies within those 4 zones to 1. Eventually that will go from 4 to 1 as the next iteration of that. We've connected our dispatch centers. There are 5 primary fire communications centers. When we had a fire in San Diego and we needed help from the Harlan area, El Cajon, La Mesa, those places, we literally had to make a phone call over there or transfer it electronically, and there was a lag built into that. We've used federal grant dollars to tie all those computer centers together in real time. We now have the ability to dispatch El Cajon resources if they're closer to us. They have the ability to dispatch San Diego resources if they're closer to us. Interactions you see here primarily are with Poway, Escondido, and Rancho Santa Fe. But in real time, we can dispatch one another's resources, and it benefits all of us. That's what the boundary drop piece of it. We've also strengthened the military agreements. There are tremendously talented pilots in our military community here. Way back in the day, CAL FIRE got some hot water because they didn't trust the ability of these pilots to fly. These pilots are exceptional. So what we've done is we've trained helicopter managers that go into the helicopter with these military pilots to help guide them through communications issues they're not familiar with, where to drop, and that works very, very well for us. Next slide, please. Because we're on our own, we need the ability to staff up more engines when a fire hits. 2/3 of our workforce is off duty at any time. Firefighters work 24-hour days, about 10 days a month, but 2/3 of them are off. So when a big fire hits like that, we put out a call and say, everybody report to a certain location, and we start piling them on our rigs. Well, after a very short time, we run out of the 60 frontline rigs that we have. At one point during the Witch Creek fire, we were down to 3 fire engines that were serving the rest of the city. All the rest of our 60 fire engines were up here dealing with the fire. But we didn't have enough reserves, so we've slowly tried to build up that reserve fleet to say when a fire comes, let's bring these now 28 fire engines into play. We'll throw firefighters on those, and we've already upped our capacity. A challenge we're having here through budget reductions is that it's hard to keep those 28 in a reserve sitting there ready to deploy status. They're getting pulled up into the fleet for routine maintenance issues every day. And we're working very hard with the folks that do our fleet work to try and change that, but it's a matter of dollars, people, and really antiquated facilities they're dealing with. It's been a struggle for us to keep those on the road. Next, please. Air sources are vitally important. In 2003, before the 2003 Cedar fire, we had a fledgling helicopter program, partly funded by the county, partly funded by donations. It was a contract aircraft. But after that, we bought a helicopter. And then when 2007 rolled around, we had one county helicopter, the city of San Diego. And in 2005, the county set up 2 helicopters that the sheriff operates in conjunction with CAL FIRE. So when 2007 rolled around, we now had 3 aircraft. Since that time, the city's again purchased another helicopter, and SDG&E, as part of their Sunrise Power Link construction, has given us use of now 2 of these big